Alright guys, welcome back to the garage. Now Sunday the 10th of January, and we'll call this part 2 to our Nissan R200B Differential installation project. And playing around in the garage today and having a look through my spares, I've managed to find a couple of candidates for the drive shaft shortening piece of this project. So one of these drive shafts will have to be shortened by 2.5 inches, I believe it is, and one of them is looking a little worse for wear than the other, but both of them each have issues. This one's got a small issue with the locking collar not locking. This one is locked up solid, so I've got some penetrating oil on it, seeing if I can get that to slide before we take it apart and service it. So having a look at those. So that's the next phase of this project, is to try to put all the pieces to the puzzle together. So the drive shafts will have to go off to be shortened and balanced. That's one of the pieces of the puzzle. And we still need to do the machining on the differential as outlined yesterday. That will be the next steps, but we'll concentrate on the drive shaft first. So fortunately, as I mentioned yesterday, I didn't want to really sacrifice the stock drive shaft that I have on the car right now, along with the stock differential. If I ever want to swap this back for whatever reason, or the next owner of this car, whoever that might be, wants to put the original diff and drive shaft back in, they will have the opportunity to do so. Alright, we've got the end of the drive shaft off, and we're just cleaning that area up with some brake clean and some paper towels. Took a little bit of a wire brush around here to clean this area up a little bit. And we'll probably just clean the tube up a little bit while we can, and then we'll probably pop off the U-joints, since we won't be using those U-joints anyway. So making progress, thought I'd just give you a quick look. We did get the collar off, and we've got to get this cleaned up. We need a new cork gasket, so we'll, I think I have some cork, and I'll be able to make a cork gasket for this. And here's the little locking ring that we'll have to flatten out and reuse. Alright guys, Monday morning, and a little bit of change in plans. I was going to try to use the old rusty drive shaft as my donor for the Nissan R200 conversion, and I started cleaning it up, and I ran into a bit of a problem with the snap rings all being broken and rusted in order to get the U-joints out. So that's a bit of a problem. It's a problem, but not a problem that can't be overcome. It's just something that I don't want to have to deal with. To have a spare differential kicking around, I can actually fix that when I need it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this one here, which is in a little bit better condition, up to the Driveline shop and have them shorten that, put new U-joints in, and we'll get it balanced at the same time. So that's where I'm off to this morning to take this up, and we'll get a quote on what it's going to take to shorten and balance this. And like I mentioned, I've got a couple brand new U-joints I'll give them as well. And a new locking collar. I stole the collar, as mentioned, the collar that was on this drive shaft. I've stolen it for use here. If they cannot fix this one, I've got the other one in my pocket, and I'll just give that to them at the same time as I drop this off. So that's what we're up to today. Alright guys, back from the local transmission shop where I've dropped my drive shaft off to be shortened and balanced, and I've also dropped off the U-joints to be done as well. Looks like that's going to cost me about $350 to $375 to have all of that done. A bit more expensive than I thought it would be. But having a look at the Richard Good website, to buy a drive shaft from Richard would be $425 American, which we convert to about $550 US, and then of course the shipping up to Canada and taxes, it'd probably be about $650 to buy a newly shortened drive shaft from Richard Good. So I'm still probably ahead of the game having it done locally. Anyway, what we've got up here on the bench is the differential, of course, and you might have noticed I've just marked the pinion, flange, and nut, as this needs to be removed now to be machined down. So basically this outer edge, outer diameter, needs to be machined down to match the diameter of the stock Triumph drive shaft. And you see this little pilot here. This little pilot has to be notched into here as well, so there needs to be some clearance made for that. As well as, of course, the bolt holes need to be drilled in the Nissan flange as well. So that's the next part of the machining that needs to be done on here. So obviously I need to remove this differential flange. So you can see I've marked it. I've actually scribed it with a Dremel as well below the liquid paper. So we can take the nut off, and obviously there's probably a preload applied to that nut, so we want to make sure that we get it back tightened to where it is currently. I've also taken a depth reading with my micrometer here, and it's 0.2310 inches from the front of this stud here. Alright, let's take that off. So we have the nut off. Now we're just going to use our little 3-jaw puller to pull that pinion flange off. Alright, let's see how difficult or easy this is going to be. Not too bad. Okay, pinion flange is off. All right, guys, what we're going to do now is we're going to go after removing these 2 wheel speed sensors, one on each side. I've asked the guys on the forums that have done this conversion before what they actually do with these harness and with these sensors. Some of the guys will actually remove them. Some of the guys will just clip the harness here and just leave the sensors in. And that's probably what I'm going to do, but I just want to get them out of the way temporarily because we're going to be working on this back cover. So I've got the air gun here. We're just going to zip these out, and hopefully those sensors will come out fairly easy. Let's do that now. Yeah, those come out pretty easily. So we'll just put that somewhere else, and like I said, we'll probably end up just putting the sensors back in to block off these holes if required. Actually, you know what? It doesn't look like there's anything internal, so we may just leave them out anyway, but we'll figure that out at a later date. So this will probably be the fun bit, getting this stud out of the back of this case. So I'm going to hit it with a heat gun and heat it up, and there was no flat or anything on it to grab it, so probably have to grab it with a pair of vice grips. We don't care too much about destroying it. We don't want to break it off, obviously, and we want to get it out of the case nice and cleanly, because we do need to use the threads in the rear of the differential case, but we definitely don't want to break a stud off in there. So let's go ahead and do that. Get the heat gun out and see if we can get that out successfully. All right, wish me luck. Looks like I'm going to get lucky. All right. There's the stud out, pretty coarse threads. So there is another step here where we need to chamfer or countersink the hole in the back of the differential cover, but we're going to wait till we get the mounting kit from Richard to be able to see exactly what needs to be done as far as the countersink is concerned. So that's it on this differential case for now. I think what we'll do though is we'll zip this rear cover off, and we will give it a bit of a wire brush and a cleanup and get ready to hit this with a coat of paint eventually. I guess we could just wire brush it and see how it comes up, and if it comes up okay, we'll actually brass brush it. If it comes up okay, we won't paint it, and if it doesn't, we'll paint it with some aluminum colored paint. So we'll just zip these off. See, with Nissan parts, you're allowed to use air tools. You need to see me use an air tool on a Triumph. And of course, they're all metric. Alright, case is off, and I knew the case had already been off because I saw the inspection before I purchased the actual disc, just to make sure the gear set was in good shape. So we'll need a new gasket for the disc cover anyway, and we knew that. So, and of course we'll have to refill it with gear oil eventually. Anyway, case cover's off. Our rear cover's off, and we'll clean that up and make it look a little bit better. Anybody interested in seeing the internals? Let me flip you around here. Get you a light. There you go. Not much to see. So, we'll move on. I believe the gear ratio is stamped here. Let me see if I can just find it quickly. It's usually stamped on the gear here. You can just see it here. I don't think you're going to be able to read this. So 46 to 1. So if you do that, (46 to 13). So if I think you divide that out, I think that works out to the 3:5:3 ratio, as I previously mentioned. Alright, that's it for now. Alright guys, not perfect, but much better anyway. Just hit it with a little bit of autosol and polished it up a little bit. Not as good on the sides. The back came up pretty nicely, so I think that's good enough to fit back on the car. Looks pretty good. I don't want it to be too shiny, otherwise it'll stand out too much. Okay, I may use the word flange a few times in the next little segment here. This is the, I'm going to call it the Nissan differential input flange, and over here in the vise is the Triumph driveshaft flange. So let's try to get this so it makes sense. The outside mark, let's go back. There are 3 operations that need to happen on this flange, on the differential flange for the Nissan R200 Diff. The first operation that needs to happen is this needs to be turned down to be the same diameter as the driveshaft flange on the Triumph. So that's operation number 1. Operation number 2, there needs to be some machining done here on the inner circumference to match what I'm calling the pilot on the Triumph driveshaft flange. This is actually stepped, so it's not flat, and obviously these 2 pieces need to sit flat against each other. So there's a little step here that needs to be sort of machined, a recess needs to be machined here into the Nissan flange. And the last operation that needs to happen is, you see I've marked out 4 locations here. Those actually match up with the bolt locations for the drive shaft to bolt up from the, obviously going to be the Nissan flange now to the Triumph drive shaft. Hopefully that makes sense. So that needs some machining. Well, I can't go any further without the help of a friend, so we're going to go on a little bit of a road trip. See you there. Alright, so road trip to the Rusty Beauty's garage, Rusty Beauty's shop out in the country. And we got the mini lathe set up. I didn't know whether he was going to be able to chuck this up or not on his mini lathe. I didn't know if he'd be able to get that in there, so he did. So we're just trying to figure it out. Looks like we can. Yeah, so we're chucking it on the inside so as not to, that's where the oil seal rides, on the outside, so we're just chucking it on the inside. And that's going to work perfectly, so we should be able to do what we need to do.
We'll see about that.
We hope.
I hope it's going to stay there.
Alright, we'll come back. We're making pretty good progress on turning this down. We're just getting to a point where just measuring. You can just see my mark that I made just on the outside. It's going to be a little too large still, but getting a little bit closer.
200 thou.
200 thou?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the outside diameter of the Triumph drive shaft flange was 3.812. We just took a measurement of the Nissan one on the lathe, and we're at 3.812. We're going to stop there. Now we're going to try to figure out how to cut the area out for the pilot. So according to Richard Good's website, we now need to do that pilot recess, 2.375 inches in diameter, and the recess is 0.080 deep. So we have our pilot machined, and we've just fitted up the 2 flanges together, and it fits absolutely perfectly. So now we're working on the bolt hole locations. So we're just actually going to scribe a mark on the face of the differential flange to get the center of the holes, and then we'll locate where the actual holes are going to go based on that center. So I don't know whether you're going to be able to see this, but there's the line that's scribed now for the center of the bolt hole location. So we're obviously going to have to mark those out still, but that's the center of the holes. Okay, there's a quick look of that Nissan flange just off of the lathe. So we're just figuring out bolt hole locations now, so that fits together nice and snugly with that pilot, so no spacing. So that's beautiful. So that's located well. And if you, I don't think we'll be able to see this, but you can see the line. I don't think you can see that in the camera, I don't think, but you can sort of see the line where it's scribed through, which is going to be the center of our holes. So there you go. All right, job done. Holes have been drilled now and look to be in the correct location according to, we've used this kind of as a template to drill through and to mark through. So that looks good. Went through a few drill bits along the way, but nope, it's about what's that, 3 hours work, 2.5 hours work to do that.
Really?
I think it's around 2.5 hours. Anyway, it's done.
It's a beer long work.
Thanks to the Rusty Beauty's machine shop.
Yeah.
This little machine here is coming very handy, right?
Yeah, it's perfect machine actually for what it is.
Right.
7-inch lathe.
Yeah. I might have to get one of those. But why would I when I have one 25 minutes away from me?
This one. I can buy a bigger one.
All right, that's it for tonight, guys. All right, guys, Tuesday night now back in my garage, and we're going to continue on doing the modifications to the R200B differential as outlined in Richard Good's documentation. So that tells us that we need to shave off this half of this boss here on the top of the differential. I think this will interfere with the frame of the TR250 if this is not trimmed down a little bit. So we're going to take the cutting wheel, we're going to remove some of it, and then we're just going to finish it with a flap disc grinder flap disc just to bring it down to the level of the actual case. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Let the sparks fly. It's good for a start. Alright, flap disc next. And there you go. I think that should be good enough, but if I need to clearance it a bit more, I will. But that's what Richard shows on his diagram, so we'll leave it there, and we'll check for fit once we get it back in the car, or once we get it on the car. Alright guys, we got the air compressor charging up, so sorry about the noise in the background. So we're just putting our pinion flange back on now. So we're getting all our marks lined up. We've got the nut marked as well, and again I've got that scribe with a Dremel underneath there, underneath that white paint mark. So we'll get this torqued back down to where it needs to be, and then we'll come back. Alright guys, the pinion flange is now reinstalled and torqued to where it needs to be, or repositioned where it needs to be. So we're pretty much done with all the modifications on this differential, with the exception of this rear cover stud, which I removed previously. I've just got it stuck back in there by hand. The only thing that needs to happen on the rear of this is that for that to be chamfered, the hole where the stud goes into. But I'm going to wait, as mentioned previously, I'm going to wait until I get the fitting kit from Richard Good before I go ahead and chamfer that hole. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the actual fittings that are supplied with the installation kit. So I want to see that and have that in hand before I actually cut the chamfer for that. So that's it. So we'll call this part 2 for the Nissan Differential R200B conversion completed for now. Next steps obviously to get the installation kit and to actually get this on the car. Obviously still waiting for my drive shaft to be shortened. That's to be picked up on Thursday this week. So we'll do that on Thursday. I'm hoping tomorrow is the ceramic coated header pickup day, but I've yet to hear from that shop, so we will see what happens tomorrow. Anyway, that's it for now guys. So still making progress in the garage. And thanks for watching, thanks for commenting, and we'll see you tomorrow.